How did you sort of get involved in NFTs, and how would you describe it to, the everyday person if they really did want to buy it?
Yeah, so first off, if you're watching this and you're interested in buying NFTs, don't buy them. Don't buy them. Don't buy them.
Hey everybody, it's James. I'm joined today with a really special guest. His name's Michael Sun, and this is actually going to be the first podcast with Nihowdy here. So Michael, we've known each other for a while. I mean, we went to pharmacy school together. We were in the same pharmacy fraternity. And I know you're actually practicing as a clinical pharmacist. And I also know that you happen to be really interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It's super rare to find a lot of, or any healthcare provider that's interested in crypto or Bitcoin. So, I mean, tell me about how you got to become a clinical pharmacist. Where was some of the, trials and tribulations you had to go through? What were some of the obstacles and challenges that you currently see right now in the industry?
Yeah, so James, appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be your first guest, and it's exciting to see you build. I know we kind of talked about Nihowdy a couple months ago, and we were trying to figure out how to get this as an NFT project. But I'm glad, I'm glad you didn't go that route. But that's a conversation for later in the podcast. But yeah, so I went through pharmacy school, kind of like a lot of our classmates, just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Originally, I was kind of focused on having my own business in compounding, but halfway through my residency, or I don't know, like a couple months in, kind of realized this wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I'm sure you can relate as a former small business owner, kind of the trials and tribulations of dealing with insurance and patients, but mostly insurance. So, but so half, when I finished my residency, I had a year-long experience, with compounding medications, non-sterile and sterile. It was cool experience. There was a lot of things that I learned that not everyone, necessarily has exposure to, but it just wasn't what I was interested in. So, just kind of by pure luck, I was just applying to some jobs, and I got, really lucky into my role as a clinical pharmacist right now at a managed care organization. So, kind of in a nutshell, what I do for our organization is my company as a whole, we're responsible 100% for our patients financially. So basically, Medicare pays us upfront at the beginning of the year, and they're hiring pharmacists to kind of play defense. Basically, we're really serving as the insurance policy for the plan for like cost prevention. So whether it be related to stopping medications that might be harmful, or modifying therapies when patients are out of the hospital to prevent them from going back. Because I'm sure a lot of people have seen there's a lot more pharmacists than there are doctors in a lot of situations. So they're kind of just using us with our medical expertise to manage patients. Most patients in our country are on millions and millions of meds, especially Medicare patients. So they really rely on us, and it's a really cool opportunity that I just kind of stumbled into. And for me specifically, I manage patients for transitions of care. So I specifically focus on MedRecs for patients that are from going from hospital to outpatient setting. And yeah, it's really fast paced. It's in pharmacy school they always talk about practicing at the top of our license. So you know, it's it's been an awesome ride so far, and just feel really lucky to be able to make a be able to switch into a career where I was able to love what I do basically. So yeah, how I got into crypto. So we had a couple of other classmates that were really interested before me. I think that some of them got in like around 2019, 2020, so they've always already had a lot of knowledge, and I kind of caught onto crypto kind of on the to the tail end of it. I'm sure a lot of people can relate where they hopped in, buying Solana at 250 or buying Bitcoin at like 60K, or Ethereum at like 4,000. So kind of caught on to the tail end of it, but kind of learning the power of crypto, kind of learning what it can do for people and kind of do for a lot of like financial systems, so to say. It's kind of just piqued my interest, and it's been been fun writing it down and hopefully writing it back up now.
Wow, that's quite an introduction. I guess before we even talk about crypto and Bitcoin, let's kind of still talk about how you're a clinical pharmacist. I mean, what do you kind of see as like the most rewarding thing about what you're doing right now? I mean, I'm sure there's listeners here who are a little bit younger and they might be thinking about going to pharmacy school or in pharmacy school and thinking about pursuing a residency possibly. What would you say to people who would be sort of interested in becoming clinical pharmacists? Like, what do you say is the most rewarding thing about what you do? What do you really hate and just say, I don't want to do this, or I wish this wasn't a part of my job description? Like, I guess what are those things that you sort of see?
Yeah, so I think the cool thing about my job is that at my company we work under a collaborative protocol. Sorry, my dog. But we
Yes.
work under a collaborative practice protocol under a medical director. So we're basically able to modify any medications without any, without asking anybody. So they allow us to really, have autonomy and they really trust us. So just in my specific setting, I think that it's a real privilege to, have people trust you and providers really want your input on things. I think that that's something that's lacking in some settings right now. And it's quite unfortunate because we all have pharmacy doctorates, and that's something that is expected out of us to really be proactive in our setting. But unfortunately, that's not something that everyone gets to do. So I feel really blessed. I feel really lucky to be able to do that. Um, I guess like the one of the cons, well, not I don't want to say it's a necessarily a con, but it does get frustrating at times seeing patients that have been started on a million different medications that no one wants to stop. Whether it be, if they're on long-term opioids, maybe sometimes they're on like two or three opioids, like sometimes they're on, oxy plus, tramadol, and then on top of that they're on, another kind of, SSRI, and then just a myriad of medications, right? Medications are appropriate in some situations, but other times, you can see that these are making them, worse clinically. They're patients, they don't want to be on it, but they were started by some, a provider in the past that was just too lazy to manage it themselves. So I don't think this is necessarily, a con of, pharmacy practice, but I think this is kind of a frustration about being a healthcare provider in general. Is just sometimes it's just really tough to work with patients that are in that situation, and I'm sure the patients can echo the same thing where they feel like they're trapped. And in my setting as well, it kind of feels like you know if they're being managed by pain management or psych, maybe I can titrate it, but at the same time, that's kind of out of my pay grade, so to say. So that's kind of one of the most frustrating parts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. I worked with a huge mental health population, and a lot of times I noticed a lot of the patients I worked with, they didn't really want to help themselves. And you knew how far you could push it with, like, say, treating them with, treatment resistant depression and sort of like getting them to feel better. A lot of them were, just not wanting to be on their medications, or they just had a really tough time accepting what they're doing or kind of working through their problems. But yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And I think that's well, almost with any field in healthcare, you're always going to have that as an issue. Now, you talked about a collaborative practice agreement. I mean, for our listeners, they probably don't really understand what that is. So I'll kind of explain. Traditionally, pharmacy has really been segregated from the medical field. A lot of times, the pharmacist will end up having to ask permission from the doctor to sort of initiate a treatment regimen, and obviously, it takes a lot of time to initiate that communication, which could lead to worse outcomes because we're not acting as fast. So it's a pretty new thing where a collaborative practice agreement is essentially where a doctor designates a pharmacist to do some of the tasks and abilities. So I guess I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on a collaborative practice agreement. What do you currently do right now that other people don't? Like, what makes it so special? With your focus.
Yeah, so kind of just give you like an idea of my workflow. So we have outpatient rounding at our company, and I work with a couple of other providers on our staff and various people in departments, whether it be home health, social services, and we meet every day and we discuss patients, talk about what happened at the hospital, figure out what the plan is moving forward, and then if they need a pharmacist to, do a med rec, manage meds, I'll review it, and then, I'll call the patient, talk with them about what's going on. If they, for instance, if they went into the hospital for, hypoglycemia, so low blood sugar, my number one goal is one, to get them off the medication that caused that event. So we're talking like insulins. And number two, I want to make sure that their blood sugar is controlled, somehow, because, you know, some situations where patients have super uncontrolled blood sugar, you can sometimes overshoot it. They go to the hospital, they come out, they're off of all meds, and then they go back in for high blood sugar, and that's kind of a vicious cycle. So in my situation, what I usually would do is I'll stop the medication and I'll get them onto something, in the meantime, and then, make sure that they have a follow up with their doctor, or they have a follow up with our, diabetes clinic, and that's just a specific instance. So, other instances, again, like if it's a heart failure patient, if they're not on the right, dose of the medication, I'll adjust it, I'll increase it, decrease it, and then I'll make sure that they have a follow up with the cardiologist. And these are all a lot of things that we talked about in pharmacy school, and they wanted us to do this, through all of our practicum classes and things like that. And even in my residency, when I was in residency in Arizona, we had to call doctors before we can adjust anything. Even though we knew it was the right thing, you still have to kind of ask someone to, get permission, even though we knew it was the right thing. So it really it really prevents lag in, in in the care. Um, the downside is, and of course, I have patients sometimes that'll ask, are you qualified to do this? Can you do this? I think I have to ask my doctor before. And I think that that's just a lot of it is, people aren't used to pharmacists doing these things, So that's also kind of like a barrier that some of us, in the company had to overcome. But it's nice to be able to be in this setting after patients have been used to pharmacists managing their meds for a while, because I think the true power is that there are some patients that love our programs, our blood pressure clinic, diabetes clinic, and then they'll say, I want to talk to my pharmacist before I take this medicine my doctor prescribed me. And that's something, that's a really cool paradigm shift in, how people are viewing pharmacists. And, hopefully this is a trend that, that will continue. And, as, laws pass and things like that, they'll give us some power, but, you know, hopefully some guidelines to make sure some of us don't, over, overstep our boundaries.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So there's a couple trending topics right now in pharmacy. The first one is like probably Ozempic. I'm sure you've heard about GLP-1s and all the rage. And sort of the ethical question I hear from a lot of different healthcare providers is like, well, should I start someone who wants to go on Ozempic, but they don't have diabetes? They're just getting for, obesity and they want to lose weight. And I've seen like this has been a huge ethical sort of debate. Right now a lot of manufacturers can't produce enough Ozempic as it stands right now, so a lot of people can't get therapy for it. So I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on this sort of like topic. I mean, what do you feel? What are your thoughts about it? As a clinical pharmacist here.
Yeah, so I think it's a cool breakthrough that they're able to find, that this medication is able to, lower your, blood sugar, improve cardiovascular outcomes, help you lose weight. But this is a problem that our company is dealing with on a regular basis where patients' A1Cs are like 10 and 11 and they can't get their Ozempic or any other, GLP-1 because people are, people that don't have diabetes are using it. And that's, that's a major challenge. And this is actually something that we're facing every single day, even when we're applying for like patient assistance programs through the manufacturer directly. They can't even get it for us sometimes. And we're actually having to call our drug reps and kind of like begging them to give us like a couple samples. And we're having to, we had to ration them at one point earlier this
Wow.
year. So,
Wow.
and then, if you look at like the diabetes treatment guidelines, right, like GLP-1 is like, it's basically at the top of the list now, same with like SGLT2s. But, in a patient that's, like A1C10, so you have metformin, then you start them on like an SGLT2, then, if they can afford the GLP-1, if Ozempic, obviously, ideally you want to get them onto that, but we're kind of having to resort to, insulins and things like that. And, we know that they don't produce as good outcomes. So it's frustrating, it's frustrating. But at the same time, I can see that, this is kind of like the free market kind of working its thing. But at the same time, you can die immediately from having, like 500, 600 blood sugar, but the weight loss thing is kind of like a slow death. So,
Yeah.
so it's frustrating. I hope they figure out the supply chain thing, but yeah, no, it's a big ethical question, definitely.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. So, if you didn't know this, I actually advise for a few telemedicine companies, and
Mhm.
I've actually been approached for a few providers who wanted to do a telemedicine setup but for weight loss. What's pretty interesting is like obviously it's very hard to get Wegovy, Manjaro, Ozempic. There's all you have to go through a traditional retail pharmacy to get that. It's commercialized. So what a lot of them end up doing is contracting out with a 503A or 503B compounding pharmacy.
Yeah.
Usually ends up to be in Florida, so they'll have like compounded semaglutide or some sort of variation of it. So I find it pretty interesting because the compounded part is actually much cheaper than the commercialized version. But again, a lot of people can't afford $200, $300 a month for the compound version. It's still pretty expensive in my opinion. But I think 5, 10 years from now, when they figure out the manufacturing issue and start to meet demand, I think that's when we start to see the price start to decline for it. But it's sort of a sad reality right now that a lot of people can't get this medication that's obviously life saving. So another topic I wanted to talk about in pharmacy right now. I mean, I'm sure you've been hearing about all these different pharmacist walkouts. Most recently in Kansas City, I think it was like CVS, or I don't know if it was CVS or Walgreens. There was a series of chain pharmacies where all the pharmacists and technicians decided to walk out and strike. And what's actually crazy is one of my friends who's a district leader in LA actually had to fly to Kansas City to work at one of the stores there. So just curious, like, what are your thoughts on sort of this pharmacist walkout? Do you sort of agree with the sentiment of why these pharmacists are walking out? Just want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing. I think the challenge is when you have healthcare companies that are ran by people that aren't healthcare providers. That's a big issue, and I think especially when you're dealing with like a publicly traded company, like any company, right? It's always, oh, did they beat earnings? Did they, exceed, did they meet expectations and things like that? So, it's this whole feedback loop where you're expected to have, you know, perform better every single 3 months, and I think that's just kind of like a trickle down effect, where corporate calls for a certain, whatever protocol, and then it kind of trickles down to pharmacists getting overworked, not as much staffing, and ultimately less patient care. And I've talked to retail pharmacists. I'm sure you have as well. And it's frustrating for them. It's yeah. It's I don't know. It's it's frustrating for me too. Kind of to talk about this, but at the end of the day, I can see both sides to it. I don't think it's necessarily like a binary thing, but I kind of feel like sometimes if you get pushed into a corner, that's kind of the only way you can get hurt because I graduated pharmacy school 2018. It's been quite a while now, and it's kind of been the same thing hearing from classmates. It's, oh, working in this setting sucks. Working in this setting, it kind of, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that. Well, you know it's like, oh, I've talked to my district leader, they don't care. They have bosses they have to answer to. So everyone has a job. Can't really blame you know kind of mid-level, mid-tier bosses, I guess you can say. But tough answer. I'm glad I'm not the one. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to figure it out. But you kind of have, but looking at how some pharmacies have operated, I know that some legislation, pushing for, less pharmacists and more techs, that's who's pushing that legislation, right? It's the chains. It's not the pharmacists that are asking for that. Every time, I talk to pharmacists, they're asking, oh, I would be nice if I had another pharmacist on staff to help me do consultation, things like that. But instead, you have corporations that are kind of lobbying for less pharmacists and more, technicians, which, technicians are, they do their great job. I love the technicians at my work, but there's things that they can't do that pharmacists can. But, a lot of the filling and, kind of the cash register stuff, having more technicians are nice, but it's cheaper for the corporations at the end of the day. So, yeah, sorry, not to get on a spiel about, corporations are bad, but I think in this situation, I think that you really need to have healthcare providers in those C-suite positions that are making the calls that are not just good for the patients, but good for, the people that are in your own practice.
I totally agree with you there. I mean, at the end of the day, these corporations are probably asking, like, what's the shareholder value we're bringing to
Yeah.
our, our shareholders? But when I worked retail, it was really difficult. You're expected to do a lot of different services, but the reimbursement structure or sort of the financial incentive for pharmacies is to dispense as many prescriptions as possible. And I see a lot of PBMs sort of reducing their reimbursements to pharmacies. In return, this sort of hampers the revenue that goes to the business and wages. What's sort of interesting is, pharmacies trending towards this professional service where we're doing MTMs, vaccinations, but at most times I've seen a lot of providers or pharmacy providers not get paid for that sort of service. So it's kind of interesting. This is the only industry in healthcare where I see that you run an inventory business model, but you're expected to perform on a professional service level without getting compensated at that level. So it's pretty interesting. I do think pharmacy has been historically the most disenfranchised profession out of all healthcare fields. If you didn't know this, Governor Newsom actually signed a healthcare bill into law, basically saying that anyone who works in healthcare, ancillary staff, technicians, will need to be paid $25 an hour starting, I believe, in 2025. But what's really crazy to me is that pharmacists were omitted from that bill, or pharmacy technicians were omitted from that bill. So it's like everyone else in the industry, they're going to increase wages for, but it just doesn't apply to pharmacy. So I always thought that was kind of weird.
Deals they didn't include pharmacists. So, it's I don't know, it's interesting. So the whole problem, a big challenge about owning your own pharmacy is dealing with clawbacks, and things like that, where, insurance will withhold money. But that argument doesn't apply for these chains because CVS owns the PBM, like, these big chains own the PBM, so I don't know what, so that ends up just kind of being like an excuse or a tagline for corporations not to really basically give their staff what they need at the end of the day for pharmacy staff. So I don't know. I don't know how we got ourselves into this, but but I don't know
Yeah.
how we're going to get ourselves out of it either.
Yeah, it's really hard to raise awareness in this sort of topic. And in general, healthcare isn't really a sexy topic. A lot of people are like, "Oh my God, what's happening in pharma? What's happening in healthcare today?" No one's really like looking into that. People will talk about the financial markets. They'll talk about their stocks. How's Nasdaq doing? How's Bitcoin doing? But in general, healthcare is like, "Oh, this is outrageous. My medication, prices went up." That's the most extent that you'll hear in the news. But sort of, I'm kind of curious. You've been a clinical pharmacist for a while. You're working, and I'm sure at some point in time you're like, hey, I want to not work anymore. And I'm sure you've probably thought about, financial independence. Have you started, I guess, investing into real estate, or do you invest, a portion of your paycheck into equities, something like that? I guess I kind of wanted to just have this discussion because I'm sure some of our listeners, they might be a little bit younger. They might be getting out of pharmacy school or medical school, and they haven't really thought about, what's the next steps after working. Like, obviously, they want to retire one day. So, I mean, have you thought about this? What are you actively doing to sort of, invest in your retirement?
Um, okay, so I'm just gonna, so I'll be honest. So, my only investment strategy is in crypto right now. That's really the main thing. And this is probably contrary to what, a lot of people will say, because I think that we're always taught, oh, buy a little bit of this, buy a little bit of that, and then, kind of, diversify yourself. But I think in the situation of cryptocurrency right now, I think that the industry within itself is very young. There's not even a, ETF technically isn't even approved for Bitcoin yet. So what I'm doing really is just buying a lot of altcoins. So if you know, so for the viewers, if you don't know what altcoins are, so basically Bitcoin is first. So it's, so if you equate this to any other industry right now, Bitcoin is digital gold. It's shiny, it's orange, and it was first. Doesn't really have as much utility as like copper or silver, but because it was first, it's precious. It's a precious metal. Altcoins, kind of like, it's not gold. Altcoins can't even be equated to silver or anything. Altcoins are just basically anything that's any, coins that are on a blockchain that's not Bitcoin. These are, it's designed by someone that has an active development team that's trying to basically be like an auxiliary system to Bitcoin, I guess you can say. So that's really my strategy right now is just buying into Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, buying into altcoins. So a lot of like Ethereum, Solana. Gonna look into getting like Chainlink at some point, but yeah, that's my investment strategy really. And I've talked to a couple people that quote unquote made it, and it's kind of more about, and this is gonna sound reckless, and I think it kind of is, but putting all of your eggs into one basket and then watching it and then looking after it. I understand kind of like the risks, and I'm and I'm sure at some point maybe listeners will look back into this and be like, oh yeah, Michael lost all of his money, but I feel comfortable with this, and I feel comfortable with the space in terms of the information I've been provided and kind of the people that I've talked to. So that's my investment strategy. But just as a broad thing, if people are interested more in the traditional markets, I would avoid putting money into actively managed 401k accounts and just put your money into SPY, so S&P 500. And the reason why is, so there's an old quote, I believe it's from Warren Buffett, is time in the market is greater than timing in the market. And if you think about actively managed 401k plans, it's human intervention onto stocks and trying to time the top, selling the top and then buying the bottom. The thing about S&P 500 is that it's an aggregate, it's a composite of the top 500 companies in the market. And that changes, that's fluid. They get reviewed every so often. So you'll see sometimes companies that were once in the S&P 500 get kicked out and they'll add new ones in. So if you think about it from this perspective, they're only adding the winners and they're kicking out the losers. So, and also the actively managed 401k plans, they take a fee too because they have to pay themselves, of course. So if you really want something that is quote unquote safe, which is not, not a real thing in investments, but if you want something that is more conservative, that you want to have some like realistic gains, just put money into S&P 500 and forget about it. You always win. The chart only goes up, which is not true for anything else, but S&P 500 will outperform anything else. Really, no matter what time frame you look at it. Well, probably longer time frames better, but that's kind of like a general thing that that I try to tell my coworkers at least.
Did you sort of develop an investment thesis in saying, I want to put all my money into altcoins? Was there some sort of, did you read Satoshi's white paper and you're like, holy shit, this is crazy? Or was there just like some sort of value proposition you saw behind altcoins? Like, what made you say, I want to invest in Ethereum and Solana over Bitcoin? What was sort of your rationale there?
So this is mostly, so the way I look at altcoins in general is that it's really a levered bet on the success of Bitcoin in a sense. But granted, you have to pick the right coins. You have to pick the right coins because crypto is like what? Like it's like really, like Bitcoin has been around for a while, like what, like it's like in like the 2000s, but for people that have actually been using blockchain, it's really like the last like couple of years, really. Like I would say maybe 5, 6 years, right? So if you look at from like the last cycle, 2021, a lot of those like leading altcoins are like gone now. Like EOS, it's like probably one of them, but how many of them went to zero, right? So really, it's kind of okay. So the challenge about like, and I think this is applies for any like stock or any asset that you want to buy is that you really need to have like a dedicated community. You have to have people that really believe in the product. So that's kind of like that is probably my number one thing about like investment thesis over tech, over the technology of it. Technology is always going to improve no matter what, right? Like what comes out this year, like Windows XP, it got Windows Millennium, Windows 98. Those the software gets better every single year. A lot of these altcoins that are coming out right now, they're touting, oh well, I can send a transaction, faster than Solana. That's 10 times faster. But if the UI sucks, who cares, right? You're not going to have people that are using it. So in terms of just like overall investment thesis, in crypto specifically, is that you need to have like a community that's ride or die. I look at like so Solana is I think is going to be one of the best performing coins like over the next couple of years. Specifically is there's so many people that bought Solana at 250 and then it went down to like $8. FTX blew it up, SBF was kind of like the main, like, that's, Solana was SBF's coin. This guy went to jail, stole, or he's probably not going to go to jail, but this guy, ruined so many people's lives, stole so much money, right? People were destitute. Solana went down to like $8, $9, and now it's at like $33. A lot of the people that bought at 250 are still, saying Solana is the truth. Solana is, this and that. So, whenever you have like an active user base, community that's really this, like rabid over this coin, I think that is like one of the green flags that you kind of have to look at, especially if you're looking at the crypto, because to be honest, crypto does not have a lot of utility right now. And like with what you're building with Nihauti, right? That's like that's a utility that's being built. But so far, what we've seen in crypto in terms of utility is just more ways of buying crypto or more ways of buying NFTs or oh you know if you hold this coin or you hold this NFT, I'm going to give you more coins that will allow you to buy more. So a lot of crypto really is vaporware. Like I don't know, like look at like Cardano. It's not really usable. Transactions take forever. Is this, are you gonna wait days or hours to wait for a transaction to settle? Why don't I just wire money instead? So, you know, really focus on the community and people that really believe in it. And I think that that's like half the battle. Because like I mentioned, tech just is going to get better. You saw other altcoins that were going to be like Solana killer, like Sui or Aptos. Aptos, a lot of traders use it to settle funds because there's low latency in terms of the blockchain. Don't really have to wait too long. It's faster than Solana, but no one uses Aptos because they don't have a community that's believes in it. So and same thing with Ethereum. Like right now, if you want to make a swap, if you want to buy coins on Ethereum, it costs like $12 just to do the swap. For me to swap Ethereum into some other coin on there. But people still use it. People love it. So, you know, even though it's a very flawed system, people are still diehard and people are, touting this as the next thing. So, yeah, to answer your question, that's kind of like the superseding thing in terms of like investment thesis.
Wow, that was quite a lot of knowledge that you dropped. So so I gotta ask because I actually found out through a mutual friend that was also in the same pharmacy fraternity as us that you were heavily invested in Solanas, and actually found out that you were also invested in Solana NFTs, which was kind of funny. I found out that you and I kind of own some of the similar projects, but I'm curious, how did you get into NFTs? I mean, a lot of people kind of look at this and say, look, it's just digital art on what appears to be a blockchain. I mean, do you really buy it for the art? Do you follow these artists? So I kind of want to know, like, how did you sort of get involved in NFTs, and how would you describe it to, the everyday person if they really did want to buy it?
Yeah, so first off, if you're watching this and you're interested in buying NFTs, don't buy them. Don't buy them. Don't buy them. But basically, so in a group chat with other classmates, in our fraternity, there were people that bought Solana at like $30 or whatever. ran it up to 250, and then I was just ignoring the chatter every day. I was like, oh crap, I don't really have a lot of money to buy into this stuff, whatever, blah blah blah. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna buy it. And then so I bought like a couple Solana at 250, $250, $250 each coin, and then kind of just got immersed with it. That was around the same time I moved out to Palm Springs. It was kind of like a pretty isolating experience. So I didn't really have anything to do except just look at crypto, look at NFTs, and kind of just riding the wave. Just just buying things that would come out to mints and things like that. Just kind of learning the terrain, losing money, kind of learning lessons and things like that. Kind of got, kind of, got my footing in the space. Met some cool people online that I still talk with today, and just kind of learning how the space works. But kind of just to answer your question, so yeah, or just to if viewers are wondering, so NFTs are basically pictures that are printed on a piece of the coin, and yeah, I don't know, kind of saying it out loud it sounds really stupid, which it is, but they're basically digital collectibles that you can have that you own. There's a couple of ways to look at it. You can look at it as like a scam, which it kind of is at some points, but the utility of it, in general, is a lot of artists, throughout time, I know, even growing up, I feel like growing up in like an Asian family, everyone would kind of be like, oh, don't, oh, like your cousin was an art major, or like, so and so, look at how they're doing, and I kind of feel like that was something that was, a bit frowned upon, and people mainly looked at that because they didn't really have like a source of income, or they weren't able to, reach, reach like Basquiat levels, or like, Banksy, so the way I look at NFTs in general is, if you look at it from like a conceptualized, view, it's a way of one artists being able to express themselves and being able to be compensated for their work. And I'm sure you've seen this, James, but like in the NFT space, artists are kind of treated like gods. You can't really you know say anything negative or anything like that. You kind of have to put them on a pedestal. And some of my art some of my artist friends in the space kind of agree with that too, and they kind of think it's a stupid kind of a stupid culture that people have developed. But that's one way to look at it, right? Empowering artists to be able to get compensated for their work, which they should. And two is being able to own your collectible, being able to own, you know in a non-custodial way, being able to own what you have. And I think that this is more of a conceptual thing, to be honest, than what will really grow into practice. Because I'm sure you've seen, like in CS:GO, people will get like a I don't know, like an Arctic knife that will sell for like millions of bucks, right? But that's not really yours. The CS:GO can take that away, or for whatever reason, if your account gets banned, that's gone forever. So I think that NFTs are a really cool way. It's a really cool like exercise, I guess, a cool experiment in terms of what owning, what ownership means, what it means to, own your art. You know, if I have this one of one art, I'm the only person that can really own it. You can right click and save it, but I'm the only one that can sell it and profit off of it. So I think that's a cool, it's a cool way of, practicing that. Now, I think last cycle with how NFTs went, I think that it was a lot of people that were trying to make money that didn't really make a lot of money through meme coins, and they're kind of just walking up the risk curve, and they kind of wanted to get their last paycheck. Because around the same time NFTs got really big, that's when the coin, price was going down. You know, when I bought Solana at 250, it was only down only since then, and it was like that for like 8 9 months. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience. It was a cool crash course of learning how market psychology works, learning, what drives people's, how to drive people towards buying something, and I'm sure you've seen like there's just been the stupidest NFT projects that will mint out and it'll go to like thousands and thousands of dollars, and I think it's a really good, exercise and kind of cool to see how psychology works. Attention economy, seeing how people will go crazy, and just more. The louder you are, the more people will go and check it out.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's a cult, but it's almost like a cult in some NFT communities. But I don't know if you know this. I actually got pretty heavy into some projects. Like I had a D Gods, I had Utes, I had Solana Monkey business, I had Zero Monkey business. I also had the Ordinal Monkey business on Bitcoin's chain, or that one. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I actually minted
Yeah.
that, so I got kind of lucky. But yeah, I got heavily invested in NFTs at one point in time, and I actually remember I was out clubbing with a group of guy friends, and I got so drunk one time. I was like, I'm gonna buy this NFT, and it was like $3,000. I just bought it on the spot. I have no clue why I did that. When I look back, I'm like, that's probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. But it was just kind of fun at that time. I mean, there was a period of time where there were so many people in the NFT community where you could just talk to about art, sort of gather around and have something in mutual common to talk about. So, I mean, that's kind of why I got drawn into NFTs and the whole scene for a bit. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to get your perspective on a lot of different things. So I guess what's kind of interesting. Do you have any price predictions for Bitcoin? And I'll be asking you, the other tokens, but do you have any price predictions for Bitcoin upcoming next year?
I don't know. I think a lot of it depends on macro, but I've heard other things into why Bitcoin has been pumping recently. A lot of the financial market is dependent on BRICS, BRICS. So that's kind of like the world, like US banking system, right? Where, it's not just America, but it's like, multiple banks around the world. And as you see other governments, and I'm not gonna get into politics or at all, but this is kind of like an objective outcome you where you can see certain countries that adhere to BRICS that will not allow some countries to get money out. So so this is like the prime example of why like Bitcoin, this is a real life scenario that's playing out about why Bitcoin was developed originally. You know, so I really don't know. Like, and I think, you've seen this happen in crypto before, but like nothing in crypto surprises me anymore in terms of how crazy things can pump. Like things can go up 10x and then it'll go like another like 10x the next week for no rhyme or reason. So, what's Bitcoin's market cap right now? I think
I should check. That's actually a really good question. What is Bitcoin's market cap?
because it all depends on the market cap, and if you equate this to like some tech companies that are not profitable at all, that are actually losing money, like I don't know, like what's PayPal's market cap?
So right now, at this time of this podcast, Bitcoin's market cap is 670 million.
Wait, it's 670 million?
I'm sorry, billion.
Oh,
It's
okay. Oh my
670
goodness.
billion. I'm sorry. I
Oh, okay.
kind of I misread the comma.
Oh man, oh, should buy some right now. Oh man, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to say.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to say, but when you see like companies like NVIDIA, where there was like a couple of weeks that month where, or a couple of weeks earlier this year where they just added like 400 billion market cap in one day after beating earnings, right? Like that was at that time they gained an entire Bitcoin market cap in one day. So I don't know. I don't really have like a specific prediction on like the price, but I would expect. So right now we're at like 33K. We might go to like 50K. It's a nice round number, and it's a good like psychological barrier. Go to 50, then come back down. I don't know. Market moves in weird numbers. And if you guys are like watching, you guys kind of wondering like, you know, market usually moves in like tens, fifties, and hundreds. So basically, if like a stock is at like $1, it goes up to like $8. Like a psychological barrier is 10. So there's a high chance that a lot of people are just going to sell at 10. And same thing, if it's at like an $80 stock, it's approaching $100, it's probably going to get up close to 100 and then just dump back down. So nice round numbers, maybe 50K Bitcoin short term, like 100K Bitcoin, ideally, so I can make my money back. But I don't know. I think 50K is a nice round number. 100K would be a nice round number too.
That's pretty good. So, I mean, what's your price prediction here for Ethereum? And I'll ask you the next one question is what is your price prediction for Solana?
Okay, so this is kind of like it's kind of a tough thing to think about with Ethereum at least, is because their Ethereum, like the two, like their upgrade, and plus like the Shanghai upgrade, didn't really do what people thought it would be, and now Ethereum's actually inflationary now. So I don't know. I think if you just want something that'll outperform Bitcoin, Ethereum would be still a safe bet, but because of how high the gas fees are, so the day when Bitcoin pumped from like 28 or like a couple days ago when it went from like 27, 28K to like 33K and then went up to 35. So gas on Ethereum, it costed almost like 35 bucks per swap. And if you're talking about if you want to use like Ethereum as a commodity to send money to people and things like that, that's not like a real practical way to transact because like a lot of third world countries are using like crypto as a way of holding money because they can't really rely on their own like hyperinflationary currency, right? So 10 $15 a transaction, like even us like working as pharmacists, I feel like that's kind of a lot to just like swap just to swap money. But so with that being said, I think there's a lot of barriers, maybe back to 4 or 5K for Ethereum. But I think Solana will probably win long term, barring like anything weird happening with like the developers and stuff like that. If you want like, granted, this is a little riskier, but if you want something that will outperform Ethereum, also, I think Solana is probably good. Chainlink is, I really don't fully understand the protocol, but from what I like understand is that a lot of corporations are going to start incorporating Chainlink into like payment processing, like within their own companies, and that's huge. This is Chainlink is like some legit like big brain stuff that a lot of retail aren't talking about on like on Twitter, and it's quietly like it Chainlink is up 50% in the last like week, and its chart looks actually really crazy too. It's so price prediction probably Solana like I think 250 at some point again is easier. The biggest holder SBF is kind of like out of the equation, whether it be like they had to liquidate some of this stuff, whether it be they actually started staking their coins the other day. But what happened with like FTX, and again, kind of goes back to like the community, is that a lot of people bought more at the lowest point, and they averaged down, and they're just saying we're not going to sell. And in terms of like the practicality of how you use things, like I can, and you've used Solana before, like you can send something from one wallet to another, and it's almost like using Venmo, and that's huge in how it works. And like I did this like thing the other day where I can connect my wallet and see how much it cost to send my transactions. I had like 10,000 transactions on it, and it wasn't more than like $1 total spent on transaction fees. So I don't know. Ethereum like 4,000, Solana 250, kind of back to all-time highs it was, and then anything after that is all like speculative. But I think obviously crypto is gonna surpass all of their previous highs. It seems like the government is more lenient on just letting it be its thing now. I feel like the government, specifically the U.S. government, has kind of tried really hard to prevent it from growing. I think the probably one of the challenges is that can put a damper on all this is if they actually do proceed with the centralized U.S. dollar, or what was it called? Like I forget, but it's like their own like stable coin from the
CBDC.
government. Yeah, CBDC. Yeah. So
It's
I don't know.
terrifying to me to hear about CBDCs. It's fucking terrifying. They can just shut off your wallet. They can say you can't transact at a moment's notice. I think that's just that's insane. I,
Yeah.
I gotta I gotta tell you this interesting story. So I was actually in Vancouver and I was like, I'm gonna get a haircut. Walked in this place called Cryptocurrency Barber or Bitcoin Barber. And it's kind of a hole in the wall. But this guy, he's from Afghanistan. He starts telling me his life story. And one thing he asked me at the end was like, hey, can you pay me in Bitcoin? I'd rather not take US or Canadian dollars. I was like, oh, sure. I mean, I can, but you're the first person to ever ask me that. Like, what's the reason here? So he tells me he's from Afghanistan and he had to emigrate from Afghanistan to America, then to Canada because of the war. So he came to Vancouver sometime in probably 2020, 2021, and he still has to send a lot of money home to support his family. But because he's of Afghani heritage, he typically gets flagged all the time when he does transactions. And it's because of, his heritage, it's because of his last name. It's just sad. So he tells me, it's just a lot easier for him to send Bitcoin back to his family. So, well, that's pretty interesting, but who uses Bitcoin in Afghanistan? Like, what can you use it for?
Mm.
This guy was like, everything. You're talking about the food vendors, you buy groceries, you go get a haircut, you get your car fixed, you want to go buy an AK-47, you can use Bitcoin. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. But part of me was like very skeptical. I thought it was like, it's kind of bullshit that he's telling me. Fast forward a few months later, I'm in an Uber going to a music festival, and my driver's also from Afghanistan. And I asked him, so I want to verify this story I heard. Would you be interested in taking Bitcoin as a payment instead of me paying you through the Uber app? This guy pulled out his wallet and was like, yeah, if you could pay me right now in Bitcoin, I'd totally take it.
Oh wow.
So it was pretty interesting to me. But this guy started shilling me Safe Moon. I was like, oh, God damn it, dude. He was talking about Safe Moon to me. I was like, oh, no, dude, this guy he drank the Kool-Aid. But yeah,
That's crazy.
it's a funny story. Yeah, I thought I had to share it with you.
Dude, but that's see like that's that's kind of the crypto like I guess vision of everything playing out, right? Like, you know, you have the only way you can access this is if you have your own seed phrase, and no one can tell you what you do with it, besides yourself. So that's super cool. And I know like a lot of I know like a lot of South Asian countries like Vietnam, a lot of people are like pretty deep into this where it's been ingrained similarly, where they're transacting using like Solana or like other altcoins and things like that. So that's super cool. That's super cool that you had that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've had actually more experiences than just limited to Vancouver. Actually, when I was traveling in Asia this past year, like when I was in Thailand, I actually had to pay someone in Solana to get a meal. It was pretty interesting, like the whole concept. So when I look at like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, there's something universal here, but I just can't quantify what that is. When you see countries like Russia being cut off from the SWIFT financial system, you have to look at it and say, well, I don't agree with Russian politics, but I do disagree with Russian individuals who don't care about the politics getting affected by this. Everyday individuals who, just simply can't even access their bank account anymore. I think that's what kind of sucks. And I think that's, the magnificent part about Bitcoin is it's completely censorship resistant. But what's sort of interesting is, you're probably one of the very few healthcare providers I know that's out there, a pharmacist who actually, understands and likes cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I wanted to know, do you have a hard time ever having a conversation with other healthcare providers or pharmacists or even other people about this topic?
A lot of the things I talk to them, like when I talk to people about it, is it's like very surface level because I think that kind of like the how like how deep I am into this is not really like as easily explained because there's a lot of different like context things that you kind of need to know. But like if I talk to other health providers or other people like that, I just tell them buy Bitcoin. Like that's the easiest. That's really the easiest way of getting some kind of exposure. And also if if like I tell them to buy like an altcoin, it goes to zero. Like just lost my coworker money,
Yeah.
So but but yeah, like I have kind of I've talked to some people about it, and I've don't kind of use those experiences to never really talk to go that in depth with them ever again. So basically, again, it's mainly just if I talk to them about it, it's oh hey, open up your Robinhood account, or if you have Coinbase, open that up, buy like the top three coins except Cardano. But yeah, I think it's like you mentioned. I kind of feel like it's like a there's something there with people that are like really deep into crypto. I almost feel like I had a similar feeling when like I first started going to like raves and music festivals. It it has that similar vibe and almost a similar feeling as like joining a fraternity when you're in college, like the first couple years in college. Not towards the tail end, but once you kind of, once you actually kind of deal with all the BS. But I feel like it's like most easily like correlated to like my experience going to like music festivals or like my first couple years in fraternities. It's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to explain it to people that aren't in it. But once you kind of like drink the Kool-Aid, you know, it's easier to like understand. But at the root of it, I think it's the easiest way like to achieve my financial goals. So that's a reason why I'm kind of just trying to stack up as much as I can right now because it is less manipulated. It's still manipulated, but I think for me at least, I feel like I have more of an edge. Um, I have more of an edge versus if I was like trading like options and stuff like that. Um, so that's kind of how I look at it. I think like obviously there's going to be a lot of issues with crypto that's coming down the line. Once there's an ETF, that's probably going to cause a lot more manipulation, and show might be over in some viewpoints, but I think for me at least, trying to achieve financial freedom is kind of like the number one thing with what I'm doing right now.
For sure. So we're actually wrapping up on time right now, but did you have any parting thoughts for any of our listeners who, possibly is a healthcare provider or maybe someone who's interested in investing into Bitcoin or anything like that?
Um, don't risk more than you can lose in any market, specifically with crypto. It's a big casino, and just make sure that you take profit before the casino takes it back. I'm sure anyone, I'm sure everyone has been up big at a casino before, and they kind of overstayed their welcome and gave it all back and then some. So just don't risk more than you can lose, because this is a casino at the end of the day.
You're hilarious. Do you want to shout out your socials for any of our listeners? I mean, you have LinkedIn. People might want to talk to you about pharmacy or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Instagram is it's Miguel Sol, and then just add me on LinkedIn, Michael Sun Farm D. I have a Twitter handle, but I don't want to dox yet. So, but add me on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to give you my thoughts and things like that. And yeah, appreciate you for having me on, James. It's an honor to be your first guest, and I'm excited to see how everything builds out and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for being on this channel. If you're interested in getting Bitcoin on your next prescription refill at your local CVS or whatever pharmacy you use, check out nihowdy.com. But until next time, thanks, guys.